Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hobby Homestead. Today I'm going to talk about what to do in your garden when it is too hot to trot. It is just way too hot for a lot of things right now. I mean, I'm looking over there outside of the frame and I see my pea plants are just yellow and crispy. And in this bed here, I've got brassicas, so broccoli and cauliflower mostly in this bed. And a couple of them are doing okay, and a couple of them are just throwing up their hands and saying, no, I can't do it. It's too hot for me. With cool season crops like broccolis and cauliflowers, they really can't handle when temperatures get above like 25, 26 Celsius for prolonged periods of time. That will trigger them to bolt. And so if you've ever grown lettuce and found that when it starts to get hot for a long time, it just sends up a tall flower stalk. It bolts, it puts on a flower, and then it goes to seed. The same thing can happen with your broccolis and your cauliflowers. Now, I'm having some pretty good luck so far with the shade of this tree. We've got this beautiful silver maple, and it shades this bed so that it only gets about 6 hours a day of direct sun beating down on it. Now, it's the afternoon sun, which is the strongest. Ideally, I guess it would get morning sun and be shaded from the strong afternoon sun, but it is what it is. I do think that's been helping though. My recording device glitched on me while I was explaining what I was going to do in this bed, so I'm just going to fill in the gaps here. Because it's been so hot, my broccolis have started to bolt. They've started to go to seed. They grew really, really tall. Instead of getting bushy with lots of big leaves around the base where they would then form a nice big head, they just shot up, and I could tell that because there was a big gap in between where the leaves came out. Like it would be stem and then leaf, stem and then leaf. And I got a couple of little broccoli heads so far, but they were very, very small, and then they would start to flower. So those were bolting. So I am going to cut these broccolis out and make room for other things that will do better for fall. But I do want to show you the difference between two of the cauliflowers and what the broccolis had been doing. The cauliflowers are quite nice and low to the ground, and they are forming little heads in there. There's another one back here. Now, that's not to say that these cauliflowers aren't also going to just remain small and then just start opening up as flowers, but I'm going to leave them in for a bit longer because I think that the cauliflowers stand a better chance of growing a bit. At least one of them looks still like pretty tight curd, so the white part is still pretty tight, like it's not quite flowering yet, but I'll keep a close eye on them. As soon as I see them starting to open up as flowers, I'm going to cut them out because I can toss them in a stir fry. You can still eat them that way, but otherwise it's wasted space. It can get discouraging when you invest time and seeds and soil and all this stuff into plants that you then have to rip out before you can even harvest them or eat them because they've bolted, they're going to seed. But if you go into it with realistic expectations that might happen, if we have a really hot summer, they might not be able to make it through to the fall garden, then it's a little bit less painful. The other thing that helps is to get used to ripping out plants and putting something else in their place. It comes easier the more you do it, and also the more growing space you have. That helps too. But when you plant things like broccoli and cauliflower, and you notice you're getting a lot of heat waves, you can just start adjusting your mindset to thinking those might have to be ripped out. What can I grow in their place that's still going to have time to grow and mature? And then this growing season, I can still reap rewards from that bed. And so in my case, I'm going to be doing some Swiss chard, some quick to harvest carrots. These are ready in 60 to 75 days, so just squeaking in under the deadline here if we want them to be fully grown by the fall equinox, which is my goal when I'm doing a fall garden. And then we have some parsnips in here, just a couple, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 parsnips or so that have been really waiting for me to pull these broccolis so that they get a little bit more light and can grow a little bit more. However, the big broccoli leaves have been shading them more, which helps. And then come mid to late August, I'm going to be planting lettuces, pak choys, and then in September, like September 1st, I do my sowing of spinach and some mustard greens and things like that. And then we're going to put a cold frame in this spot. So it will be angled down, a big glass door, which I scored on Facebook Marketplace recently. We'll be able to lift the lid and harvest through the winter. And in that case, those crops that I'm putting in here, mustard greens, spinaches, parsnips, carrots, Swiss chard, and maybe even some of the beets if they're still in here by fall, I don't know. I have beets in here now that are fairly small. those will be fine under the cold frame probably up till Christmas time, like up until the end of December. And that's going to stretch this garden out for longer so that it's not such a heartbreak to have to pull the brassicas. I use snips, heavy duty snips, to cut my plants off at the base so you can leave the roots in. Those will break down over time, feed the life in the soil. And you can use, oh wow, okay, the spider is eating a mosquito. In case you needed further evidence that spiders are awesome, it's a mosquito in its web. So yeah, you can eat the brassica leaves, and these are really clean, so I might take a couple of them in to eat, and then the rest go to the chickens. Definitely take the crown and eat that. So this part here where it was going to flower, it's tender, it'll taste just like broccoli. It's perfect. And because I keep it under cover, there's no bugs in it besides a spider and a mosquito. But there's no cabbage moths in here laying their eggs. We'll try again next year. There's another mosquito in a spider web. This kohlrabi is ready. Kohlrabis grow so quickly that you can usually get a kohlrabi harvest before they bolt, just because they grow really fast. And they're pretty tough. I mean, some of the slower growing kohlrabis, like the green ones I have, are meant for storage. They last a long time and they can grow through like the winter months, the cold months. Those ones I have had bolt because they just take longer, but these purple ones are really fast, so usually they're good to go. You can just see it's growing upwards on a long stalk with lots of space between the leaves. And I mean, that can happen too if you're growing them in too much shade because they're sort of getting leggy. They're reaching for the light. But these are getting at least 6 hours of sun. And I have other things in here, like my cauliflowers are not doing that, which is further evidence that this is about to bolt. But again, they've got perfectly delicious little leafy bits on them. We'll save these leaves too. Have a stir fry later. Now I'm going to get my hose and I'm going to water this soil really well before I plant things like seeds and Swiss chard. Don't leave your seeds sitting next to the bed when you go get the hose to start watering. I do that a lot. Another reason I'm doing this today is because we're supposed to get thunderstorms this evening, hopefully. And it really does help when you're sowing seeds to have a natural rain event happen. That rain has magical properties. It pulls down nitrogen from the sky and probably some other amazing things that help your plants grow. My favorite garden tool is my Hori Hori knife, and it has been missing for at least a month now. No idea where it went. Okay, I'm going to do carrots right along the front. Just pull the straw aside. I've got St. Valerie and I've got Sprint. They're fairly fast maturing carrots, the fastest ones that I have seen. And thanks, Matt, for recommending Sprint to me. I always love a reason to buy seeds in the middle of summer. Getting bitten by mosquitoes. Okay, I'm going to dig like the tiniest little trench just so the carrot seeds don't get displaced. And I'm going to sow fairly thickly. I've also started a really good habit of labeling the seeds I'm direct sowing, and I write the date on which they were sown on the label. Sprint is going over here. With carrot seeds, you just barely cover them. Just a skiff, a light skiff of dirt over them. Some chard. If you're concerned about germination because of the heat, you can also overseed, put more than you need. I'm also going to add cardboard. I'm going to wet the cardboard. And then I come back and check underneath the cardboard every few days. and I look for signs of germination. And I will come back to this bed to sow more in mid-August. Other things that struggle in this heat are peas. Now this is very typical for us. This is about how long it takes for our peas to look like this. It's always around mid-July that they start to look like death. But I'm actually fine with that because we're done with the peas, done eating them, and I'm letting them dry on the pods now so that we can bring them in and make like pea soup with the peas. I didn't love all these varieties for fresh eating. Some of them were kind of gross. So yeah, I'm just letting them dry in the pods, and then we'll take them in and make pea soup. Another thing that you might find surprising that doesn't love the heat is tomatoes. When it gets too hot, when it gets above about 29 or 30 Celsius, they can actually drop their blossoms. Now, I haven't noticed that so much on like my cherry tomatoes, but the tomatoes over here on the trellises, that could be why we're having pretty low fruit growth so far. There's some, and I think it also partially depends on the variety. Gardener's Sweetheart is known for being very hardy, very prolific, and so I'm not surprised to see it's got lots of blossoms and lots of fruit set on it so far. In fact, it's probably going to be the first of the plants over here that produces ripe fruit. There's some blushing here. But then some of my bigger heirlooms, there's like very few blossoms. Just 4 or 5 blossoms up here on this plant. It's got 1 fruit set here at this level and 2 fruit set here at this level. Down below it has more fruit set, but these down at the bottom would have been the first ones to grow, so it probably was before a heat wave struck that it set those blossoms and set that fruit. So as it grows taller, it starts to set more blossoms and more fruit, and if it's happening during a heat wave, then it just won't set as many. It's just something strange. Like you wouldn't necessarily think that, sneak peek of the new raised bed, you wouldn't necessarily think that tomatoes can't handle the heat because they're a summer crop, they're a warm season crop, and they can't handle the cold either. But yeah, too hot and they will drop their blossoms. Not all of them, but you'll get reduced yield. Here's another thing that I am doing in the garden. When I'm sowing seeds right now, I am making sure to put down cardboard. I always do this with carrots, but I'm doing it with everything right now. So I'm watering them every day, and I'm putting cardboard on them and watering the cardboard. Just doing what I can to make sure the soil stays shaded and moist. Because if you're trying to succession sow things right now, if you're trying to grow fall things in the garden right now, they're not going to want to come up. If it's going to be 33 degrees Celsius today. Like that's got to be in the 90s in Fahrenheit. And I mean, we're in southern Ontario, we're in Canada. That's a lot. And it's just been like this consistently for days and days. And this is, I think, our 3rd heat wave where we've had stretches of temperatures like that so far this season. It's a lot for us. So in this bed also, I've got this like makeshift shade cloth. I couldn't find the rest of my burlap. I didn't feel like ripping apart my shed. So I just had this, and then in the afternoon, this shades the rutabaga seedlings from the direct afternoon sun, and I think it's been helping let them bounce back a little bit. So, you know, I plan ahead. I start seeds for the fall garden, but fall garden here is challenging because not just the low light we get in fall and the early frosts. Well, early, it's like, you know, the 1st, 2nd week of October usually. But it's also because our summers can be scorching. And so the things that you need to start now to get them to be ready to harvest for the fall garden, they don't like growing in the scorching heat waves. So when it's too hot to trot, I like to use shade cloth. I use burlap for that. It works great, especially for the afternoons. In fact, sometimes I'll drape burlap just like over the south half of a garden bed so that there's good airflow, but it blocks part of the bed from the afternoon blazing sun. Things that like this amount of heat are melons, squash. This is Armenian cucumber, so it's technically a melon, and it loves it. Cucumber beetle squishing time. I still wouldn't call our cucumber beetle situation an infestation. They are way more manageable than in previous years. So while cucumbers may be getting a little bit crispy in like 33 degrees Celsius weather, the Armenian cucumber so far is doing great. And melons, like I've got a melon over here that's just taking off. It's full of pollinators too, how lovely. They don't like to be filmed, they're camera shy. We've got some cucumber beetles up here. Squish. Squish. My grandma always used to squish bugs with her bare fingers and it would make me want to vomit when I was a kid, and now I do it too. I'm also growing some brassicas in here. These are ones that I started from seed in June. I think it was June 17th. I sowed the seeds and they were just transplanted out in like the second week of July. I was looking for a break in a heat wave to plant them, but there is not a break in the heat wave. It's just 30 degrees every day or 29 degrees every day. So what I'm going to try to do with these is keep them covered with a shade cloth. I use burlap as a shade cloth. I open it up in the morning so they can get morning light, and then I cover it to shade them for the afternoon. And I mean, so far they haven't died, but they're stressed. Brassicas just don't like the heat. But if you plant enough things, then you'll have some successes. And there's a couple that look okay. Here's a Waltham broccoli. And I always talk about how you have to look at a seed packet to know how many days are left, how many days are required to grow that plant out to be harvestable. And then you look at how many days left you have in your growing season. So for me, with cold weather crops, that means how many days until my fall equinox, when the daylight is just getting weaker, things aren't putting on much growth. And I have about, at this point, it's been a while since I calculated it, but probably like 65 days, something like that, 60 or 65 days. So not that much time left. And some of these varieties should go from like little seedlings, little transplants to a mature plant in 65 days, but we will see. With brassicas, there are so many different factors that change how long it'll take for them to form a head. I've found that with broccolis, cauliflowers, and even cabbages, they can take like a month different from what a package says based on the environmental conditions. So if it is hot and sunny, no, they're not having it. And it's always going to be a challenge with the heat, right? Trying to get cool weather crops to even germinate when it's really hot is challenging, which is why I'm loving that that bed is so shaded for so much of the day. It really does stay cooler in there. The sun's not beating down on the soil, making the soil really hot, which helps. Also using a mulch, like a straw mulch, will help reflect some of that sun's heat off of the soil. And then all these brassica scraps that I'm not eating can go to the chickens. The last thing I'm going to do this morning, it is like 9:30 in the morning and the sun is already so hot. I'm going to clean out the chicken's ice bucket, ice trough, and I'm going to water the seeds that I've sown elsewhere in the garden, like the carrot seeds over here. They're under paper. This is where I took the garlic out from, by the way. So right now, the rutabagas, I put this guy into shade, or rutabaga. There's some fennel and some rutabaga seedlings that are very unhappy in the heat. And then there's carrots under this paper, and I just water it really well every morning. It stays fairly moist underneath. I think that's all the tips that I have for you for what to do in your garden when it's too hot to trot. Look at plants that aren't handling the heat that you may have to pull out. Any of your remaining spring crops, maybe your spinach has gone to seed, maybe your lettuces have gone to seed, or your broccolis. Pull them out, find something that you have enough time to replant, and you can use some tricks like putting them in partial shade, putting a shade cloth or burlap over top of them. Remember to look at the days to harvest to make sure you have time to grow these things to maturity before, for us as Zone 5B, the 43rd parallel, we're aiming to have things mature by the fall equinox, so the end of September. And if it's just really too hot and you just can't do anything right in the garden right now, which is sometimes how I feel in the heat waves, just wait and then do some quick growing spring greens in the fall when things are finally cooled down. I say that and then I have the realization that, like, what if we have heat waves in September? Which is also possible. In that case, enjoy things like melons and cucumbers, which here at least it doesn't get hot enough that it'll fry a cucumber plant easily. Just keep things watered. Water early in the morning if you can. Water deeply. And good luck. I hope that you can stay cool through all this if you're getting the same heat that we are. If you're getting a little wildfire smoke, stay safe, particularly if you're up in the northern parts of Canada. My heart goes out to you. I hope that you're okay with all of the smoke and the fires and everything. Um, and yeah, on that negative note, this is how I get when it's hot. I get cranky and I get pessimistic. On that note, thanks for watching, and I hope that you'll come and grow with us.